Hello everyone, it's Brett here, Lionheart84, and I'm making today my conclusion for me personally about various aggregate mixes and the degree of success they have with, in this case, avocados and the pluses and minuses. It was just an experiment really, started in the case of the three at the front on the 17th of April, and I believe the avocado behind in this larger pot was probably done sometime early in March. And what I found actually has been quite interesting for me personally. Now, the three avocados at the front here, you can see, let's pull you up and let you see the height. The first thing I would say is ignore this sort of browning on the tips of the leaves and the burning on these. That's not caused by anthracnose or any other problems with the actual plant as such. That's because I've had these three avocado seedlings in my summer house, and on a couple of days I forgot to open the ventilation window, and they absolutely cooked in there. So these are basically, they didn't get watered enough, and all the plants drooped and all the leaves got scorched because it got up to about, I think it was about 40 degrees centigrade in there, which is probably or more, maybe 45 centigrade, so it probably got up to about 110, 115 Fahrenheit, which is hardly ideal for young avocado seedlings that aren't watered. So the leaves have suffered on them. But what is meant to be of interest on these are these three mixes, different compost mixes. Now they're all out bacon avocados, and they are all planted up from stones that were germinated in water on the 17th of April. Now this one here at the end was in what I call almost a pure aggregate mix. It has got bark in it, but otherwise it's just perlite, pumice and clay granules. Now the same, and you can see that in fact since I potted it up in April, and we're now 4 months later because we're in the middle of August, the plant has not grown whatsoever. It hasn't died, but it hasn't deteriorated as such. It's still got this spotting on the leaves, but it hasn't grown whatsoever despite being watered and fed the same amount as the other plants. And furthermore, as a confirmation of it behind it, this one behind was, don't think it's a bacon, I think this is a Hass I sowed a long time ago. Basically this one suffered dieback in the spring. I think I overwatered it. So to try and save it, I decided to experiment with this pure aggregate mix, which my good friend Gary has been using with a good success rate on a lot of his tropicals and citrus. But I think this particular aggregate mix is too aggressive. I think it's gone far too far over the level to what's manageable for the trees. And in actual fact, although the plant's not actually died, it has not so much as grown a leaf since March. We're getting on for 6 months later, and although the roots obviously haven't actually failed on it completely, it's not recovered or taken to the aggregate mix at all. So I'm going to repot. I think this experiment of torture has gone on long enough for these two plants. I'm going to repot them today, and I'm going to choose one of the other two mixes. Now the other two plants, basically, this one I tried in my 511 citrus mix, so that's 5 parts of orchid bark to 1 part of perlite to 1 part of compost. I think if it's a pure citrus one, I've probably used moss peat, but you could just as easily use compost as the 1 part. And basically it's looked pretty healthy all the way through, barring this leaf scorch, which is my fault for not ventilating it or watering them. And the last one was just put in a pure potting compost and nothing else, straight out the bag from the nursery. Now I think the compost is called Jack's Black, so I think it is a high fibre. It is a high fibre compost, but nevertheless it's just a shop bought one, and this plant has grown absolutely far and away the best. It's probably 4 inches taller than the one in the citrus mix. Hasn't dropped any leaves whatsoever, apart from obviously these ones that I've scorched, and it looks extremely healthy. Now the only conclusion I can come to is clearly this lightweight, there's loads of roots coming out the bottom of the pot. I'm going to repot these all up today actually. The conclusion I've come to is that the best compost for avocados is actually just either a completely plain standard compost from the pot, or possibly a citrus mix. The pure aggregate mix is too aggressive and too heavy for the plants to get established with it. Now what I would say, and that tells me that the main problem with avocados in our country, especially over winter, is clearly overwatering and drowning the roots. Not necessarily because the plants don't like a lot of water, which they do, but I think the problem is these composts become waterlogged very easily in winter because the plant's not using the moisture and it's not evaporating. Now I've had no problem with that happening in the summer house, because obviously the extreme summer we've been having and the high temperatures in the summer house have evaporated all of the surplus moisture off the compost. Now as this compost gets wet and breaks down and turns into a sludgy mass, the roots don't operate anymore. So I believe it should be possible to grow avocados in the bog standard potting compost or the citrus one, but I think the key is to basically not water them at all in winter until such point as the plants are actually drooping badly, which tells you that the compost is absolutely totally bone dry. And I think at that point you can give them a light watering, enough to get the leaves to pick up and not water them anymore. So I think that I'm going to be able to look after my avocados in future purely by not watering them until they're absolutely on the levels, on the point of dying from lack of water. Not so much of a problem in spring and summer, but I just wanted to try these aggregate composts for anybody who was having troubles with avocados. So I think I could probably add sand to these. This one I could probably just add a load of sand to this, to be honest, to open up the compost, or perlite. But I think the standard composts are okay rather than the aggregates, because they suit the plant's root systems better. But I think the key is simply extremely strict watering regimes in our country, and I really believe that I might be able to keep all my avocados alive if I simply don't overwater them. But we'll see what happens. I will keep you updated on these, but I'm definitely going to move these two into a standard sort of citrus mix today and see if I can generate some growth on them and get them to recover, because clearly the roots aren't liking them. Anyway, that was my update and report on my personal conclusions for me on what composts I'm going to use in my avocados. I'm certainly not necessarily recommending anyone else does the same. It's purely what I think is going to work for me, and we'll wait and see what happens with these and if I can keep them alive over winter. They are only seedlings, and I've got plenty of bacon seedlings, so it wouldn't matter if I lost a couple anyway. So thank you very much for watching that video, much appreciate it. Not a Daphne, of course, just a pot I was using. Please give the video a thumbs up. You're welcome to share it if you think talking about different compost mixes might help anybody with their tropicals. Please subscribe to my channel, and remember to click on the bell if you'd like to get updates on new videos as I put them out. I'll catch up with you all soon. Brett out for now.